So in this video, we're finally going to see some applications of using trigonometry to our advantage. To introduce this idea, I'm going to take a couple old skills and then we're going to combine them to our new skill. So if we want to solve this equation for x, we know we have 5 equals x over 3. To undo dividing, we multiply. So 15 is equal to x. Not so bad. If we have something like this though, 4 equals 32 divided by blank, or divided by x. It's kind of weird to think, but what we can do is we can multiply both sides by x and then divide both sides by 4. Alternatively, what we could do is instead of just having 4 equals 32 over x, we could write this as 4 over 1 equals 32 over x, and then we could cross multiply and get 4x equals 32, so x is 8. Now, what we learned in our last lesson was this introduction to our trig ratios. Remember, sine is the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So from A, the opposite side is 4. The hypotenuse is 5. The cosine of A is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. So the adjacent side is 3. The hypotenuse is still 5. The tangent is the side opposite the angle over the side adjacent the angle. So 4 over 3. So how we're going to combine these, we're going to need to know how to do sine, cosine, and tangent on our calculators. Most of your calculators, if it looks like this, has these buttons in the middle. Some of you have to press the trig button first, but otherwise we're looking for these buttons that looks like sin, cos, tan. That just means sine, cosine, and tangent. So if you want to take your calculator out just to make sure you're getting the same numbers as me, sine of 60 is 0.87. Cosine of 60 is 0.5. Tangent of 60 is 1.73. The sine of 30 is 0.5. The cosine of 30 is 0.87. And the tangent of 30 is 0.58. Now, if you didn't get these numbers, your calculator is probably set in a different setting. So reach out to me or another math teacher to get help on that. It's probably just an easy calculator setting. But you can't do these problems if you're not getting these numbers. That's why I wanted to put this slide in here. So to use SOHCAHTOA, to use sine, cosine, and tangent to solve for a side length, we're going to pick which trig ratio we should use based on what we're given, and then solve for the one of the sides. So for this particular problem, from 35 degrees, this is the hypotenuse. This is the opposite side because it's not touching the angle. And this is the adjacent side. Now, we don't know the adjacent side. We only have the hypotenuse, and we're asked to find the opposite side. So the first question, and probably the most difficult part of any of these, is deciding which trig ratio to use. If you have the opposite side on the hypotenuse, which of these are you allowed to use? Well, only sine. So sine of 35 is equal to x over 10. So now we have an angle measure, so we put that in. And now we just have to solve this for x. So to get x by itself, you multiply both sides by 10. So 10 times the sine of 35 is equal to x. Then you take out your calculator and you press 10 times sine 35 and just press enter. You get 5.74. And it's really that easy for these. So the hardest thing really is figuring out which of the trig ratios to use. I recommend labeling the sides. Draw the arrow across from the angle you have. That's your opposite side. Start there. We'll try some more of these. So here we have 24 degrees, x, and 10. I'm going to draw my arrow opposite the angle. This is my opposite side. The hypotenuse is always across the 90. So the last side is the adjacent side. Well, now you have to ask yourself which of these trig ratios can we use with the opposite and the adjacent side. And you have to figure that out on your own. Opposite and adjacent, that's opposite hypotenuse, adjacent hypotenuse, oh, TOA. So we're going to use tangent because that relates opposite and adjacent sides. So the tangent of 24 is equal to 10 over x. And now, like our first example, or I guess our second example, how I like to solve these is write this as a proportion. Tangent 24 over 1 just gives me that fraction, so I can cross multiply. X times tangent 24 is equal to 10. Now to get x by itself, tangent 24 is just a number. You could plug it into the calculator, so you divide it from both sides. 10 divided by tangent 24. There's no such thing as dividing by tangent. That's not what you're doing here, dividing by tangent 24. So 10 divided by tangent 24 is equal to 22.46. So the rest of this video is just going to be trying out a couple more examples. But really that's the main thing for the lesson. If we want to find x or y, we can do it in any order. So I'll find x first, just because. So from 58 degrees, the opposite side is x, the adjacent side is y, and the hypotenuse is 20. Now that I have this labeled, if I want to find x, I need to use the hypotenuse because I can't use y to find x because I don't know what y is. So opposite and hypotenuse, what are we going to use? Well, sine again. So sine of 58 is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, which is 10 over 20. To get x by itself, to undo dividing by 20, you multiply by 20. So 20 times the sine of 58, we take out our calculator, and we get 16.96. To find y, we'll do the same thing, only now we'll use the adjacent side and the hypotenuse, which is cosine. So cosine of 58 is equal to the adjacent side y over the hypotenuse. To get y by itself, multiply by 10. And then finally, just plug this into the calculator and call it good. 10 times cosine 58 is equal to 5.30. That was my dog sneezing, if you could hear that. So one last example. We're going to make this really tough. We're standing 36 feet away from the base of a building. The angle formed by the ground in your line of sight is 50 degrees. You can see that here. How tall is the building? Round your answer to the nearest hundredth and assume you're 6 feet tall. What that means is 6 feet to your eyeballs. So to figure out the height of the wall, we're going to figure out what this is. And then what we need to do is combine x plus 6 to find the total height of the wall, since we are starting 6 feet up. So basically, once we can find x, we just add 6 to it. We call it good. For our purposes here, we have from 50 degrees, draw our arrow to the opposite side, and then we have the adjacent side. So we're going to be using tangent. Tangent of 50 is equal to x over 36. Multiply both sides by 36. Punch that in. 36 times the tangent of 50. I get 42.9. So that means the total height of the wall is going to be 48.9 feet tall. So that's just a little application where you have to do something after you find a side length. In geometry class, we do some activities, well, quite a few activities relating trig, and this is a common one where we've gotten to like run around the school and measure the height of tall things. That's why I want you to see it now to maybe prep you for next year. But that wraps us up for our second day of trig.